Chicago police saying that early this morning around 9:30 there was a fight between two women.
Child, let me tell you something. The streets are buzzing, and this time, the whispers are darker than ever. The name on everybody's lips right now is Romecha Meeks. A young mother, a woman fighting to rebuild her life, and a story that should have been about fresh starts and second chances. But instead, it ended in bloodshed, heartbreak, and unanswered questions. They first called it a fight. Some even called it self-defense. But then came the leaks, the rumors, and the so-called official reports that never seemed to add up. Witnesses spoke about headlocks, gunshots in broad daylight, and a scene that felt less like a random altercation and more like a setup. And just when the case seemed closed, when people were told to move on, something chilling surfaced. Allegedly, the FBI had information, files that suggested this wasn't an accident at all. That Romecha's death wasn't just some heated argument gone wrong, but a carefully planned tragedy. A sinister plot involving jealousy, domestic violence, and maybe even a cover-up. The streets are talking, her family is screaming for justice, and the community is left shaken. How could a devoted mother, a woman leaving behind heartfelt notes to her son in his lunchbox, suddenly be painted as the aggressor? Why were there so many contradictions in witness statements? And why, despite so many red flags, was the case shut down so quickly? Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain. We're going deep into the chilling truth behind the death of Romecha Meeks. Because if these leaks are to be believed, her death was no accident. Romecha Meeks wasn't just another name in the headlines. She was a 30-something mother, working hard to put her life back together. Reports say she was studying to become a nurse, balancing school with motherhood, and doing everything she could to give her young son the life he deserved. To her friends and family, she was vibrant, stylish, and full of hope. But on that morning, everything changed. It all began like any other day. Romecha dropped her son off at school in Chicago's South Loop neighborhood. Nothing seemed unusual. But moments later, a confrontation unfolded that would leave the community shaken. Standing on the sidewalk was Cordia Holly Johnson, her baby daddy's new girlfriend, and the mother of his other children. Tensions between these women weren't new. People close to them knew there had been arguments, restraining orders, and even rumors of harassment. But no one expected it to end like this. Witnesses say that as Romecha returned to the school, some claim she was bringing lunch for her son, the situation escalated quickly. Words were exchanged. Then came the pushing, the fighting, and finally, the unthinkable. In broad daylight, right outside the school, a gun was drawn. Romecha was allegedly held in a headlock by her ex, Carlos Loss, as Holly fired a fatal shot. The scene was chaos. Parents screamed. Children were nearby. And in a matter of seconds, Romecha was on the ground, critically wounded. Emergency crews rushed her to Struger Hospital, but it was too late. She was pronounced dead, leaving behind her young son and a family shattered by grief. At first, the official story painted Romecha as the aggressor. Reports circulated that Holly had a protective order against her. Videos allegedly surfaced showing Romecha being confrontational in the past. This narrative spread fast, almost as if someone wanted the public to see Romecha in a certain light. But her family wasn't buying it. To them, Romecha was a victim. A mother who had just written her son a loving note that very morning, telling him he was smart, funny, and loved. How could that same woman suddenly be the villain in her own story? Her relatives and friends described her as protective, nurturing, and determined to move forward in life. They insisted that jealousy and manipulation were at the root of what really happened that day. And here's where the first red flags appeared. Why was Holly released so soon after being taken into custody? Why did the authorities move so quickly to label this self-defense? And why did Carlos's role, the man allegedly holding Romecha in a headlock, barely make it into the headlines? To the family, to the community, and to those following the case online, something just didn't add up. And that's when whispers began. Whispers that maybe this wasn't an accident, but a planned attack disguised as self-defense. As the days passed after Romecha Meeks' tragic death, the story should have been straightforward. A fight gone wrong, a clear investigation, and justice for the victim. But instead, things grew murkier, more confusing, and far more sinister. The police initially claimed that Holly Johnson had acted in self-defense. They pointed to reports that she had a protective order against Romecha, painting Romecha as the aggressor. Some local outlets even began sharing rumors that Romecha had a history of harassing Holly, and that this incident was the climax of a long feud. But then, FBI leaks started making their way into the public conversation, and suddenly, the picture didn't look so clean. According to whispers and alleged files,
I want justice. She didn't deserve it under no circumstance.
investigators had uncovered shocking details that contradicted the official narrative. One of the biggest inconsistencies? Witness accounts. Multiple people at the scene said they saw Carlos Luss, Romecha's ex, holding her in a headlock during the altercation. That disturbing detail alone changes everything. If Holly fired the fatal shot while Carlos restrained Romecha, can it really be called self-defense? Or was it something else entirely? Then there's the bizarre car situation. Sources close to the investigation revealed that Holly and Carlos reportedly arrived at the school in separate cars. That raised eyebrows immediately. If they were together that morning, why wouldn't they just ride in the same vehicle? Some speculate it was to create an alibi, to make it seem like their meeting with Romecha was coincidental rather than planned. Was this a setup, staged to look like a chaotic fight but orchestrated to end in tragedy? The leaks didn't stop there. Files allegedly mentioned evidence of domestic violence in Romecha's past relationship with Carlos. Family members had long claimed she endured manipulation and narcissistic abuse at his hands. And yet, despite this history, his involvement in the fatal incident was barely investigated. Why was Carlos treated as a bystander when witness accounts suggested otherwise? Social media exploded with theories. The streets were talking. Was this an orchestrated plot by Carlos and Holly? Some pointed out how quickly Holly was released after her arrest. Others asked why so many contradictory reports surfaced, almost as if someone was working hard to muddy the waters. Even the way the case was reported in the media raised suspicion. One day, headlines painted Holly as a cold-blooded killer. The next, she was framed as a terrified woman protecting herself. And then came the chilling claim that the FBI might have evidence suggesting this was no random act of violence. Leaked whispers hinted at communications, jealousy, and premeditation. A dark plot disguised as a heated argument gone wrong. But if the FBI truly had such evidence, why wasn't it front-page news? Why wasn't anyone being held accountable? These contradictions fueled anger and mistrust in the community. To many, it looked like a cover-up. Whether to protect someone, to avoid public outrage, or to keep certain names out of the spotlight, one thing became clear. The truth was being hidden. And with every unanswered question, the case grew darker. What really happened that morning? Why was Romecha's story twisted so quickly? And how deep does this conspiracy go? When a tragedy strikes, the community usually looks to law enforcement for answers, for justice, for closure. But in the case of Romecha Meeks, every answer raised 10 more questions. And the deeper people looked, the more it began to resemble a pattern, a disturbing pattern that's far too common. Think about it. A young mother, building her life, focusing on her child, suddenly loses everything in a violent confrontation. Official reports rush to label it an accident or a case of self-defense, despite glaring contradictions. Witnesses are ignored, families are left grieving, and the system seems quick to move on. Doesn't that sound familiar? Many online couldn't help but draw eerie parallels between Romecha's death and other controversial cases where women, often mothers, ended up dead under suspicious circumstances. In some, the narrative was twisted to paint the victim as aggressive, while the accused walked away with little or no punishment. The chilling truth is, Romecha's case doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of a larger web of stories where justice is delayed, or worse, denied. Community outrage grew louder by the day. Vigils were held, petitions circulated, and hashtags trended demanding justice for Romecha. Her handwritten note to her son, calling him the coolest, smartest, funniest kid and promising him love, became a haunting symbol of what was stolen. A mother's voice, silenced forever, while her little boy is left asking why. And then came the whispers that the
Downtown, there's still really heavy police presence here near Cermak and State. You could see that police have taped off a portion of the area. Right now, detectives are surrounding a white sedan that appears to be connected to this incident. Chicago police saying that early this morning around 9:30 there was a fight between two women. That scene unfolding here near State and Cermak. One of the women allegedly...
FBI's involvement wasn't just about this one incident. Some claimed the agency was quietly connecting dots between multiple cases with suspicious similarities, sudden deaths, protective orders twisted against victims, abusers turned into innocent bystanders, and outcomes that just don't add up. Could Romecha's death be part of something bigger? A pattern of negligence, corruption, or even intentional cover-ups? The streets certainly think so. Theories spread like wildfire. Theory 1. Carlos orchestrated the attack, using Holly as the weapon and hiding behind the guise of self-defense. Theory 2. Authorities knew more than they admitted and released Holly to protect her, or someone connected to her. Theory 3. The FBI is sitting on evidence that could expose a larger domestic violence crisis, but they are keeping it quiet to avoid backlash. And here's the most sinister thought of all. Maybe this was never meant to be solved. Maybe, from the moment Romecha's life ended, the plan was to close the case quickly, bury the truth, and leave the family fighting for answers they may never get. The public isn't buying the case closed narrative. People are demanding the truth, connecting the dots themselves, and refusing to let Romecha's name fade into silence. Because this isn't just about one woman's death. It's about every woman whose cries for help were ignored, every child who lost their mother, and every community left wondering if justice even exists for people like them. So, was Romecha's death just another tragic fight gone wrong? Or was it part of something much darker, a calculated plot, covered up under the watchful eyes of those meant to protect us? Until the truth comes out, one thing is clear. The story of Romecha Meeks is far from over. And there you have it, loves, the chilling, messy, and heartbreaking story of Romecha Meeks. A young mother taken too soon, a family crying out for justice, and a case filled with more twists than answers. The streets are talking, the whispers are loud, and the receipts don't add up. Was this truly a fight that spiraled out of control, or was it a carefully staged plot designed to silence Romecha forever? One thing's for sure, the official story feels Sue's, and the people are not convinced. From the FBI's alleged leaks to the conflicting witness accounts, this case has all the makings of something much bigger and much darker. And until the truth comes out, Romecha's name will remain a symbol of both tragedy and unanswered questions.